The coffee was still warm when Allison dropped the bomb that would change everything. I sat there in our kitchen, the morning light streaming through windows I'd installed myself last spring, watching my fiancée of 3 years fidget with her engagement ring like it was suddenly too tight. "Marcus, I need to talk to you about something important," she said, her voice carrying that careful tone people use when they're about to ruin your entire world. "I've been doing some soul-searching lately, and I think I need to explore my feelings for Tyler." Tyler, her coworker at the marketing firm downtown, the guy with the perfectly styled hair and the Tesla who always seemed to find reasons to text her after hours about urgent projects that couldn't wait until Monday. I set down my mug slowly, buying myself time to process what she'd just said. "Explore your feelings," I repeated, tasting the words like they were something rotten. 2 months before our wedding. "It's not what you think," she rushed to explain, leaning forward with that earnest expression she wore when trying to convince clients to buy overpriced advertising packages. "My therapist says that unresolved feelings can poison a marriage before it even starts. She thinks I need to understand what these emotions mean before I can fully commit to us." Her therapist. Dr. Patricia Winters, the woman who charged $200 an hour to validate whatever Allison wanted to hear. The same therapist who'd convinced her that her mother's criticism was emotional violence and that her previous boyfriends had all been narcissistic manipulators. "So you want to cheat on me," I said flatly, "but you're dressing it up in therapy speak to make it sound noble." "That's not fair, Marcus." Her voice sharpened, the mask slipping just enough to show the irritation underneath. "This is about personal growth, about making sure I'm bringing my whole, authentic self to our marriage." I almost laughed. Authentic self. 2 years ago, her authentic self had been a small-town girl from Ohio who worked at a non-profit and drove a Honda Civic. Now she was a brand strategist who talked about optimizing her life experience and leveraging opportunities for self-actualization. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. "Nothing's happened," she insisted, but her eyes shifted away from mine. "That's why I'm talking to you about it now. I want to be honest. I want to handle this the right way." The right way. As if there was a proper etiquette for asking your fiancé's permission to pursue another man. As if she'd found some relationship advice column titled, "How to Betray Your Partner While Maintaining the Moral High Ground." I stood up from the table, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor I'd refinished myself when we first moved in together. The sound seemed to startle her, as if she'd expected me to sit there and negotiate the terms of my own humiliation. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Getting dressed," I said. "I have work to do." I owned a vintage auto restoration shop on the east side of town, specializing in muscle cars from the 60s and 70s. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid well enough, and there was something satisfying about taking something broken and making it beautiful again. Something honest about it that apparently didn't exist in my personal life anymore. "We need to talk about this," Allison called after me as I headed for the stairs. "No," I said without turning around. "We really don't." I could hear her following me up to our bedroom, her heels clicking on the wooden steps. She'd started wearing heels to work about 6 months ago, part of her new, professional image. The same time she'd started staying late for those urgent projects with Tyler. "Marcus, please," she said, standing in the doorway as I pulled on my work clothes. "I know this is hard, but running away isn't going to solve anything." "I'm not running away," I said, buttoning my shirt. "I'm going to work. Some of us still have commitments we honor." The barb hit home. Her face flushed, and for a moment I saw a flash of the old Allison, the one who would have been mortified at the idea of asking her fiancé for permission to pursue another man. "This is exactly why I need to explore these feelings," she snapped. "You're being passive-aggressive and manipulative. You're trying to make me feel guilty for being honest about my needs." Her needs. Everything was about her needs now. Her need for growth, her need for authenticity, her need for exploration. When had my needs stopped mattering? When had our relationship become a vehicle for her self-discovery instead of a partnership between two people who'd promised to build a life together? I grabbed my keys from the dresser, the metal cool against my palm. You want to explore your feelings for Tyler? Go ahead. But you don't get to keep me as a backup plan while you figure out if the grass is greener. That's not what I'm doing, she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I turned to face her fully. You want to pursue another man while staying engaged to me. You want to keep the wedding planning going, keep the ring on your finger, keep me paying half the mortgage on this house while you decide if you'd rather be with someone else. That's exactly what you're doing. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. For the first time in months, she seemed to be at a loss for words. I walked past her toward the stairs, then stopped. You know what the funny thing is, Allison? I would have respected you more if you'd just admitted you wanted to be with him. If you'd been honest instead of trying to manipulate me into giving you permission to cheat. I'm not cheating, she said weakly. You're planning to, I replied. The only difference is you want my blessing first. I left her standing there in our bedroom, surrounded by the wedding planning materials she'd spread across every surface. Invitation samples, venue brochures, catering menus, evidence of a future that had just evaporated like morning fog. The drive to my shop took 15 minutes through downtown traffic, but I barely noticed the other cars or the pedestrians hurrying to their own jobs. My mind was spinning, processing what had just happened and what it meant. 3 years. 3 years of building a relationship, of planning a future together, of believing that we wanted the same things. And now she wanted to throw it all away to explore her feelings for some slick marketing executive who probably saw her as nothing more than a conquest. But what bothered me most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the way she'd presented it, wrapped up in therapeutic language and self-help buzzwords, as if asking for permission to cheat was somehow noble, somehow evolved, as if I was supposed to applaud her emotional honesty and support her journey of self-discovery. I pulled into the parking lot of Blackwood Restoration, the business I'd built from nothing over the past 8 years. The sign out front was simple black letters on white, no fancy graphics or marketing slogans. Just my name and what I did. Honest work, honestly advertised. My first client of the day was already waiting, a 1967 Mustang Fastback that needed a complete engine rebuild. The owner was a retired teacher who'd bought the car as a project to work on with his grandson. He'd brought it to me because his own mechanical skills weren't up to the task, but he wanted to learn, to be involved in the process. That's what real partnership looked like, I thought as I unlocked the shop. 2 people working toward the same goal, each contributing what they could, both committed to seeing it through to the end. I spent the morning losing myself in the familiar rhythm of disassembly and diagnosis. The Mustang's engine had been neglected for years, but the bones were solid. With patience and skill, it could be restored to its original glory. Some things were worth saving, worth fighting for. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Allison. We need to finish our conversation. I'll be home early tonight so we can talk. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. There was nothing left to talk about. She'd made her choice when she decided that exploring her feelings for another man was more important than honoring her commitment to me. The afternoon brought a steady stream of customers and phone calls, the normal business of keeping a small company running. I welcomed the distraction, the concrete problems that had concrete solutions. A transmission that needed rebuilding, a paint job that required color matching, an electrical system that had been butchered by a previous owner who thought he knew what he was doing. These were problems I could fix, unlike my relationship, which had apparently been broken beyond repair long before I realized it. As closing time approached, I found myself dreading the drive home, not because I was afraid of another confrontation with Allison, but because I was tired of the whole charade. Tired of pretending that our relationship could survive what she'd revealed that morning. She wanted to explore her feelings for Tyler. Fine. But she could do it as a single woman, not as my fiancée. Some lines once crossed couldn't be uncrossed. Some betrayals, once spoken, couldn't be taken back. I locked up the shop and headed home, my mind already working through the practical details of what came next. The wedding would have to be cancelled. The deposits would be lost, but that was a small price to pay compared to the cost of marrying someone who saw our relationship as negotiable. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, Allison's car nowhere to be seen. She was probably still at work, having another urgent meeting with Tyler to discuss her feelings and plan their exploration. I let myself in through the front door and stood in the entryway for a moment, looking at the life we'd built together. The furniture we'd chosen, the artwork we'd hung, the countless small decisions that had seemed so important at the time. None of it mattered now. It was all just stuff, and stuff could be divided, sold, replaced. What couldn't be replaced was trust, and that had been the first casualty of her request to explore her feelings. I walked upstairs to our bedroom and pulled out the suitcase I'd bought for our honeymoon trip to Italy. The irony wasn't lost on me as I began packing my clothes. We'd planned to spend 2 weeks touring Tuscany, visiting vineyards and art museums, celebrating the beginning of our married life. Instead, I was packing to leave, to begin the process of untangling our lives and starting over. At 34, I'd thought I was done with new beginnings. I'd thought I'd found the person I wanted to grow old with. But Allison had made it clear that she wasn't that person. She was someone who saw commitment as optional, who believed that feelings were more important than promises, who thought that personal growth justified personal betrayal. I was folding my last shirt when I heard her car in the driveway. A few minutes later, her key turned in the front door lock. "Marcus," she called. "I brought dinner, Chinese from that place you like." Peace offerings, as if egg rolls and sweet and sour pork could somehow undo what she'd said that morning. I zipped up the suitcase and carried it downstairs. Allison was standing in the kitchen, unpacking containers of food, her face bright with false cheer. "I thought we could have a nice dinner and talk about this like adults," she said, not looking at the suitcase in my hand. "There's nothing to talk about," I said. She finally noticed the suitcase. "What's that for?" "I'm leaving," I said simply. "Tonight." Her face went pale. "Marcus, you're being ridiculous. We can work through this." "No," I said. "We can't. You want to explore your feelings for another man. Go ahead, but you don't get to do it while you're engaged to me." I set the suitcase down and pulled the engagement ring from my pocket. I'd taken it from her jewelry box upstairs, the 2-carat diamond that had cost me 3 months' salary. She'd loved that ring, had posted pictures of it on social media within hours of my proposal. "Here," I said, holding it out to her. "You'll need to return this if you want to explore your feelings properly." She stared at the ring like it was a snake. "I don't want to break up with you, Marcus. That's not what this is about." "Yes, it is," I said. "You just don't want to admit it." I placed the ring on the kitchen counter next to the Chinese food containers. The diamond caught the overhead light, throwing tiny rainbows across the granite surface we'd picked out together 2 years ago. "I'll be staying at a hotel until I can find an apartment," I said. "I'll come by this weekend to get the rest of my things." "Marcus, please," she said, and for the first time that day, she sounded genuinely distressed. "Don't do this. We can go to counseling. We can work through this together." "You should have thought about that before you decided to explore your feelings for Tyler," I said. I picked up my suitcase and headed for the door. Behind me, I could hear her starting to cry, but I didn't turn around. Tears were just another manipulation tactic, another way to avoid taking responsibility for her choices. She'd made her bed. Now she could lie in it. Preferably with Tyler, since that's what she wanted anyway. The hotel room was generic and sterile, nothing like the home I'd just left. But it was honest in its emptiness, unlike the relationship I'd been living in for who knows how long. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number for our wedding planner. It was after business hours, but I left a voicemail anyway. "This is Marcus Blackwood," I said. "I need to cancel the wedding scheduled for September 15th. Please stop all planning activities immediately. I'll call tomorrow to discuss the financial details." One down, dozens to go. The venue, the caterer, the photographer, the band, the florist. All the vendors who'd been counting on our wedding for their paychecks would have to be notified. Some deposits would be lost, but that was the cost of Allison's exploration. I spent the next hour making calls and sending emails, systematically dismantling the future we'd planned together. With each cancellation, I felt a little lighter, a little more free. By the time I finished, it was nearly midnight. I lay back on the hotel bed and stared at the ceiling, processing the events of the day. 12 hours ago, I'd been an engaged man planning a wedding. Now I was single, living in a hotel, starting over at 34. It wasn't how I'd planned to spend my Thursday, but it was better than the alternative. Better than pretending that a relationship could survive one partner's desire to explore their feelings for someone else. Allison had wanted permission to cheat. Instead, she'd gotten her freedom. All of it, permanently. I hoped Tyler was worth it. The next morning brought a steady stream of increasingly frantic text messages from Allison. I read them over coffee in the hotel restaurant, each one more desperate than the last. "Marcus, please call me. We need to talk about this. You're being irrational. I never said I wanted to break up. I talked to Tyler last night. I told him I couldn't pursue anything with him. Doesn't that mean something? Please don't cancel the wedding. We can work through this." I deleted each message after reading it, then turned off my phone. I had work to do, and I didn't need the distraction of Allison's damage control efforts. The drive to my shop felt different that morning. Lighter somehow, like I'd been carrying a weight I hadn't realized was there. The morning air was crisp, the sky clear, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe properly. My assistant, Jake, was already at work when I arrived, bent over the engine bay of a 1969 Camaro SS. He looked up when I walked in, his expression curious. "You look different today, boss," he said. "Good different, like you won the lottery or something." "Something like that," I said. "How's the Camaro coming along?" We spent the morning working side by side, the familiar rhythm of restoration work soothing in its predictability. Unlike relationships, cars were logical. When something was broken, you could identify the problem, order the right parts, and fix it. No therapy speak required, no exploration of feelings necessary. Around 10 o'clock, my phone rang. I'd turned it back on to handle business calls, but this one was from a number I didn't recognize. "Blackwood Restoration," I answered. "Marcus, this is Patricia Winters, Allison's therapist." I almost hung up immediately. The fact that Allison had sicked her therapist on me was both predictable and pathetic. "Dr. Winters," I said coolly, "I'm at work. What can I do for you?" "Allison is very upset about what happened yesterday," she said in the carefully modulated tone that probably cost $200 an hour. "She feels like you misunderstood her request for emotional exploration." "I understood it perfectly," I said. "She wants to pursue another man while staying engaged to me. There's nothing complicated about that." "That's not accurate," Dr. Winters said. "Allison was trying to be honest about her feelings in order to strengthen your relationship. She was seeking transparency, not permission to cheat." I set down my wrench and walked outside, away from Jake's curious ears. "Let me ask you something, Dr. Winters. Are you married?" "I don't see how that's relevant." "Are you married?" I repeated. "Yes, I am." "If your husband came to you and said he needed to explore his feelings for a female colleague, would you consider that strengthening your relationship?" There was a long pause. "Every relationship is different, Marcus. What matters is honest communication about needs and boundaries." "Right," I said. And my boundary is that I don't share my fiancé with other men. Allison crossed that boundary when she decided to explore her feelings for Tyler. The engagement is over. You're being very black and white about this, Dr. Winters said. Relationships require nuance, compromise. No, I interrupted. Relationships require commitment, something Allison apparently doesn't understand. I hung up before she could respond. The audacity of it amazed me. Not only had Allison asked for permission to cheat, but now she was enlisting her therapist to convince me that her betrayal was actually a sign of relationship health. The rest of the morning passed quietly, but around noon I had another visitor. This one showed up in person. Marcus Blackwood? I looked up from the Mustang engine I was rebuilding to see a woman in an expensive suit standing in the doorway of my shop. She was probably in her 40s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. "That's me," I said, wiping my hands on a shop rag. "What can I do for you?" "I'm Rebecca Hartwell," she said. "Allison's mother." Of course she was. I should have seen the resemblance immediately. The same entitled expression, the same assumption that the world should rearrange itself to accommodate her needs. "Mrs. Hartwell," I said, "I'm surprised to see you here." "Allison called me this morning," she said, stepping carefully around a puddle of motor oil. "She's devastated about what you've done." "What I've done?" I almost laughed. "Your daughter asked for permission to cheat on me 2 months before our wedding. I ended the engagement. I'd say my response was pretty reasonable." "That's not how she tells it," Rebecca said, her voice sharp with disapproval. "According to Allison, she was trying to be honest about some confusing feelings, and you overreacted." "She wanted to explore her feelings for another man," I said slowly, as if explaining something to a child. "While staying engaged to me. How exactly should I have reacted to that?" Rebecca waved her hand dismissively. "Young people have crushes all the time. It doesn't mean anything. The mature response would have been to work through it together, maybe go to counseling." "A crush," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it now?" "Allison has invested 3 years in this relationship," Rebecca continued. "She's planned a beautiful wedding, made arrangements with all our friends and family. You can't just throw that away because of some minor emotional confusion." The entitlement was breathtaking. In Rebecca's world, Allison's betrayal was a minor inconvenience, something to be managed rather than addressed. The fact that she'd destroyed our relationship was less important than the social embarrassment of canceling a wedding. "The wedding's already canceled," I said. "I spent last night calling all the vendors." Rebecca's face went white. "You did what?" "I canceled everything. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the band, all of it." "You had no right to do that," she snapped. "Half of those deposits came from Allison's family, and half came from me," I replied. "Consider it the cost of your daughter's exploration." "This is ridiculous," Rebecca said. "You're destroying a good relationship over nothing. Allison doesn't even want to be with this Tyler person. She told him last night that she couldn't see him anymore." "After I ended the engagement," I pointed out. Funny how her feelings became clear once she realized there were consequences for her actions. Rebecca stepped closer, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "You're making a huge mistake, Marcus. Allison is a catch. She's beautiful, successful, ambitious. You'll never find anyone better." "Maybe not," I said. "But I'll never find anyone worse either." The insult hit home. Rebecca's face flushed red, and for a moment I thought she might actually slap me. "You're going to regret this," she said finally. "When you're 40 and alone, wondering why you threw away the best thing that ever happened to you, remember this conversation." "I'll keep that in mind," I said. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." She left without another word, her heels clicking angrily on the concrete floor. I watched her drive away in her BMW, probably already planning her next move in the campaign to get me back in line. The afternoon brought more interruptions. First, it was David, Allison's brother, who showed up with a cooler full of beer and an offer to talk things through like men. When I declined both the beer and the conversation, he accused me of being stubborn and immature. Then it was Jennifer, Allison's best friend and maid of honor, who tried to convince me that Allison's request for exploration was actually a sign of how much she loved me. According to Jennifer, only someone who truly cared about their relationship would be honest about having feelings for someone else. The logic was so twisted, it made my head hurt. By 5 o'clock, I was ready to go home to my hotel room and order room service. But as I was locking up the shop, my phone rang one more time. "Marcus?" It was Allison, her voice small and shaky. "Can we please talk? Just for a few minutes?" "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "Please," she said, and I could hear her crying. "I made a mistake. I see that now. I never should have said anything about Tyler. I should have just ignored those feelings until they went away." "You should have ignored them," I agreed. "But you didn't. You decided they were more important than our relationship." "That's not true," she protested. "I love you, Marcus. I want to marry you. I want to spend my life with you." "No, you don't," I said. "You want to have your cake and eat it too. You want the security of being engaged to me while exploring other options. That's not love, Allison. That's selfishness." "I'll do anything to fix this," she said desperately. "I'll quit my job so I don't have to see Tyler anymore. I'll go to a different therapist, one who won't fill my head with stupid ideas about exploration. I'll do whatever you want." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. She sounded genuinely distressed, genuinely sorry for what she'd done. But then I remembered the way she'd presented her request, wrapped up in therapeutic language and self-help buzzwords. The way she'd made it sound like I was supposed to support her emotional journey, even if it led her to another man. "It's too late for that," I said. "You showed me who you really are yesterday morning. I believe you." "People make mistakes," she said. "You can't just throw away 3 years because of one mistake." "It wasn't a mistake," I said. "It was a choice. You chose to prioritize your feelings for Tyler over your commitment to me. You chose to ask for permission to cheat rather than honor your engagement. Those weren't mistakes, Allison. They were decisions that revealed your true character." She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder. "Fine," she said. "If that's how you want to be, then fine. But don't come crawling back to me when you realize what you've lost." "I won't," I said, and hung up. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, processing the conversation. The tears had been real, but so had the anger underneath them. Allison was sorry she'd been caught, sorry there were consequences, but she wasn't sorry for what she'd done. In her mind, I was the one being unreasonable. That night, I had dinner at a small restaurant near the hotel, a place that served honest food without pretension. The waitress was friendly but not intrusive. The other diners were locals who minded their own business, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could relax. My phone stayed silent for the rest of the evening. Either Allison had finally gotten the message or she was regrouping for another assault. Either way, I was ready for whatever came next. I'd spent 3 years building a relationship with someone who saw commitment as negotiable. Now, I was free to find someone who understood that some things weren't open to exploration. Someone who knew the difference between love and selfishness. Someone who wouldn't ask for permission to break my heart. 3 weeks passed in a blur of paperwork, apartment hunting, and the steady rhythm of work. I found a place across town, a small but clean 2-bedroom with a garage where I could work on my own projects. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and that felt good after months of living in a space that had been increasingly dominated by wedding planning materials. The apartment came furnished, which saved me the hassle of dividing up household goods with Allison. I'd left most of our shared possessions in the house, taking only my tools, my clothes, and a few personal items that mattered to me. Let her figure out what to do with the rest. Jake had been a godsend during the transition, handling more of the day-to-day operations while I dealt with the logistics of starting over. He was young, maybe 25, but he had good instincts with engines and better instincts with people. He never asked questions about why I'd suddenly moved out of my house, never commented on the fact that I was working longer hours than usual. "Boss," he said one Thursday morning as we were opening up the shop, "you've got a visitor." I looked up from the work order I was reviewing to see a familiar figure standing in the parking lot. Tyler Brennan, Allison's coworker and the catalyst for everything that had happened. He was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, lean, with the kind of carefully styled hair that probably required expensive products and regular maintenance. He wore a tailored suit that cost more than most people made in a month, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. "Mr. Blackwood," he said, approaching with his hand extended, "I'm Tyler Brennan. I work with Allison." I ignored his outstretched hand. "I know who you are." "I was hoping we could talk," he said, lowering his hand but maintaining that professional smile. "About Allison." "Nothing to talk about," I said, turning back to my work order. "I think there is," Tyler said. "I understand you've broken up with her because of me, because of some feelings she mentioned having." The casual way he said it irritated me, as if destroying a 3-year relationship was just a minor inconvenience, a misunderstanding that could be cleared up with the right conversation. "She didn't mention having feelings," I said without looking up. "She asked for permission to explore her feelings for you. There's a difference." "Right, well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about," Tyler said. "The thing is, I'm not interested in Allison that way. I mean, she's attractive and all, but I'm seeing someone else. Someone serious." Now I did look up. Tyler was still smiling, but there was something calculating in his eyes. Something that suggested this conversation was more about protecting his own interests than clearing up any misunderstandings. "Congratulations," I said. "I'm sure Allison will be thrilled to hear that." "The point is," Tyler continued, "there's no reason for you two to break up over this. It was all just a misunderstanding. Allison got the wrong idea about some friendly conversations we had at work." "Friendly conversations," I repeated. "Exactly. Nothing romantic, nothing inappropriate. Just two colleagues talking about work projects." I set down my pen and gave Tyler my full attention. "Let me ask you something, Tyler. If these were just friendly work conversations, why do you care whether Allison and I get back together?" His smile flickered for just a moment. "I don't like seeing people hurt over a misunderstanding, especially when I'm involved." "That's very noble of you," I said. "But here's the thing. Even if you're not interested in Allison, she was interested enough in you to ask her fiancé for permission to pursue you. That tells me everything I need to know about her commitment to our relationship." "People get confused sometimes," Tyler said. "It doesn't mean anything." "It means everything," I replied. "It means she was willing to risk our entire relationship for the chance to explore her feelings for you. The fact that you weren't interested doesn't change that." Tyler's professional facade was starting to crack. "Look, man, I don't know what you want me to say here. I'm trying to help fix this situation." "I don't want you to say anything," I said. "I want you to leave my shop and stay away from me." "You're being unreasonable," Tyler said, his voice taking on an edge. "Allison made a mistake, sure, but everyone deserves a second chance." "Why do you care?" I asked again. "If you're not interested in her, if you're seeing someone else, why are you here trying to convince me to take her back?" Tyler hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw the truth. This wasn't about helping Allison or clearing up misunderstandings. This was about Tyler protecting himself from the fallout of his own actions. "She's been difficult at work since you two broke up," he admitted. "Emotional, distracted. It's affecting the team dynamic." There it was. Tyler wasn't here out of nobility or concern for Allison's happiness. He was here because Allison's emotional state was making his work life uncomfortable, and he wanted me to fix it by taking her back. That sounds like a problem for your HR department, I said. Not for me. Come on, man, Tyler said, dropping the professional act entirely. Just take her back. Make her happy again so she can function at work. What's the big deal? The audacity of it was stunning. He wanted me to resume a relationship with someone who'd betrayed me, not because it was the right thing to do, but because it would make his office environment more pleasant. The big deal, I said slowly, is that I have self-respect. Something you apparently don't understand. Tyler's face flushed red. You know what? Fine. Be stubborn, but don't blame me when you realize you've made a huge mistake. I won't, I said. Now get out of my shop. He left without another word, his expensive shoes clicking on the concrete floor. I watched him drive away in his Tesla, probably already planning his next move to deal with the Allison situation. Jake emerged from the back office where he'd been discreetly working during the confrontation. Friend of yours? He asked with a grin. Something like that, I said. The guy Allison wanted to explore her feelings for. Ah, Jake said, nodding sagely. He looks like the kind of guy who uses hair product. I laughed. The first genuine laugh I'd had in weeks. Yeah, he does. The rest of the day passed without incident, but Tyler's visit had confirmed something I'd suspected. Allison's request for exploration hadn't been a momentary lapse in judgment or a therapeutic exercise gone wrong. It had been a calculated attempt to have the best of both worlds, to pursue Tyler while keeping me as a safety net. The fact that Tyler wasn't interested didn't absolve her. If anything, it made her betrayal more pathetic. She'd been willing to destroy our relationship for someone who saw her as nothing more than a workplace distraction. That evening, I was settling into my new routine of takeout dinner and television when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but I answered anyway. Marcus? The voice was female, older, with a slight southern accent. This is Carol Brennan, Tyler's mother. I almost hung up immediately. The fact that Tyler had apparently enlisted his mother in whatever campaign he was running was both surprising and ridiculous. Mrs. Brennan, I said, what can I do for you? I understand there's been some trouble between you and your fiancé over my son, she said. I wanted to call and apologize. That wasn't what I'd expected. Apologize for what? For Tyler's behavior, she said. He told me about his conversation with you today, and I'm ashamed of how he handled it. I sat up straighter, suddenly more interested in the conversation. What did he tell you? That he'd been flirting with an engaged woman at work, that she'd gotten the wrong idea about his intentions, and that her fiancé had broken up with her over it, Carol said. He seemed to think it was funny. Funny, I repeated. Tyler has always been careless with women's feelings, Carol said, her voice heavy with disappointment. He likes the attention, the validation, but he never considers the consequences of his actions. I've tried to teach him better, but some lessons have to be learned the hard way. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I don't want you to think that all mothers raise their sons to be thoughtless, she said, and because I think you should know that Tyler has a pattern of this behavior. This isn't the first engaged woman he's pursued, and it probably won't be the last. The information was interesting but not surprising. Tyler struck me as exactly the type of man who would enjoy the challenge of pursuing unavailable women, who would see engagement rings as obstacles to overcome rather than boundaries to respect. I appreciate you calling, I said, but it doesn't change anything. Even if Tyler was actively pursuing Allison, she's the one who asked me for permission to explore her feelings for him. She's the one who broke our engagement. I understand, Carol said. I just wanted you to know that not everyone in the Brennan family approves of Tyler's behavior. After she hung up, I sat in my apartment thinking about the conversation. Tyler's mother had confirmed what I'd already suspected, that her son was a predator who targeted committed women for sport. But it didn't matter. Allison was an adult who'd made her own choices. She wasn't a victim in this situation, she was a willing participant. The next few days brought a welcome return to normalcy. No surprise visits from Allison's family members, no phone calls from therapists or co-workers or concerned friends. Just the steady rhythm of work, the satisfaction of fixing things that were broken, the peace of a life without drama. I was beginning to think that maybe everyone had finally accepted that the relationship was over, that there would be no reconciliation, no dramatic reunion. I should have known better. On Sunday evening, exactly 1 month after I'd ended the engagement, Allison showed up at my apartment. I heard the knock and looked through the peephole to see her standing in the hallway, holding a bottle of wine and wearing the blue dress I'd always told her looked beautiful on her. Her hair was styled the way I liked it, and she'd clearly put effort into her appearance. For a moment, I considered not answering the door. But that felt cowardly, and I'd never been a coward. Better to face this head-on and end it once and for all. "Allison," I said, opening the door but not inviting her in. "What are you doing here?" "I brought wine," she said, holding up the bottle with a tremulous smile. "That Pinot Noir you like from Oregon. I thought maybe we could talk." "We've talked," I said. "There's nothing left to say." "Please, Marcus," she said, and I could see tears starting to form in her eyes. "Just give me 5 minutes. Let me explain what really happened." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let her in. The apartment was small enough that she could take it all in with a glance, the basic furniture and bare walls that spoke of a man starting over. "This is nice," she said, though we both knew it wasn't. "Cozy." "What do you want, Allison?" I asked. She set the wine bottle on my kitchen counter and turned to face me, her hands clasped in front of her like she was about to deliver a rehearsed speech. "I want to tell you the truth," she said. "About Tyler, about what really happened." "I know what happened," I said. "You told me yourself." "No, I didn't," she said. "I told you what Dr. Winters convinced me to say. She said that honesty was always the best policy in relationships, that I should share my feelings with you even if they were confusing or inappropriate." It was a new angle. I had to give her credit for that. Now the therapist was the villain, the one who'd given bad advice that had destroyed our relationship. "So you're saying it was Dr. Winters' fault that you asked for permission to cheat on me?" I said. "I'm saying she convinced me that having a crush on a coworker was something I needed to discuss with you," Allison said. "She made it sound like keeping it secret would be dishonest, like it would poison our relationship." "And what do you think now?" I asked. "I think she was wrong," Allison said quickly. "I think some feelings should be kept private, worked through on your own. I never should have told you about Tyler." "Because you never should have had feelings for him in the first place," I said. "Because they didn't mean anything," she corrected. "It was just a stupid crush, the kind of thing that happens sometimes when you work closely with someone. It would have passed if I'd just ignored it." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. She seemed sincere, genuinely convinced that she was telling me the truth. But sincerity didn't change the facts. "Even if that's true," I said, "it doesn't change what you asked me for. You didn't just tell me you had feelings for Tyler. You asked for permission to explore them." "I was confused," she said. "Dr. Winters had filled my head with all this stuff about authentic communication and exploring emotions. I didn't know what I was saying." "You knew exactly what you were saying," I replied. "You wanted to pursue another man while staying engaged to me. You wanted permission to cheat." "That's not true," she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Then what did you mean when you said you needed to explore your feelings for Tyler?" I asked. "What exactly did you think that exploration would involve?" She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. We both knew what exploration meant in the context of romantic feelings. It meant dates, intimacy, the full range of romantic and physical connection. "I wasn't thinking clearly," she said finally. "I was listening to bad advice from a therapist who doesn't understand real relationships." Dr. Winters didn't make you have feelings for Tyler, I said. She didn't make you ask for permission to pursue him. Those were your choices, Allison. Your decisions. Decisions I regret, she said desperately. Decisions I would take back if I could. But you can't, I said. That's the thing about choices. Once you make them, you have to live with the consequences. She was crying now, real tears that streaked her makeup and made her look younger, more vulnerable. For a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her in the first place, before the ambition and the therapy speak, and the sense of entitlement had taken over. I love you, Marcus, she said through her tears. I know I made mistakes, but I love you. Doesn't that count for something? It counts, I said, but it's not enough. Why not? She asked. People make mistakes in relationships all the time. They work through them, they forgive each other, they move on. Some mistakes can be forgiven, I said, but some reveal fundamental incompatibilities. What you asked me for wasn't just a mistake, Allison. It was a window into who you really are. I'm someone who loves you, she said. You're someone who was willing to risk our entire relationship for a chance with another man, I corrected. You're someone who thought commitment was negotiable, who believed that your feelings were more important than your promises. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her makeup further. So that's it? 3 years together, and you're just going to throw it all away? I'm not throwing it away, I said. You already did that when you asked for permission to explore your feelings for Tyler. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her processing the finality in my voice. This wasn't a negotiation or a discussion. It was a conclusion. Fine, she said, her voice hardening. But you're making a mistake, Marcus. I'm a good catch. I'm successful, ambitious, attractive. You'll never find anyone better. It was almost word for word what her mother had said weeks earlier. The entitlement was genetic, apparently. Maybe not, I said, but I'll never find anyone worse either. She gathered up her purse and headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. When you're 40 and alone, she said, remember this conversation. Remember that you had a chance to be with someone who loved you, and you threw it away over nothing. I'll remember, I said. I'll remember that I had self-respect. She left without another word, taking her wine and her tears and her empty promises with her. I watched from my window as she drove away, probably already planning her next move or her next relationship. For the first time since this whole mess had started, I felt truly free. Free from the drama, free from the manipulation, free from the exhausting work of trying to build a life with someone who didn't understand what commitment meant. I was 34 years old, starting over, and it felt good. 8 months passed like pages in a book I was eager to finish. Summer turned to fall, fall to winter, and winter to the early promise of spring. I settled into my new life with the satisfaction of a man who'd made the right choice, even if it hadn't been the easy one. The auto shop thrived. Word spread about the quality of our work, and I found myself turning away customers, a problem I was happy to have. Jake proved himself invaluable, handling more responsibilities and earning a promotion to shop manager. We hired 2 more mechanics to keep up with demand. My personal life found its own rhythm. I dated occasionally, nothing serious, just dinner and conversation with women who understood that some men preferred honesty to drama. I bought a 1970 Chevelle SS that needed complete restoration and spent my evenings working on it in my apartment's garage, the methodical process of bringing something beautiful back to life, serving as both hobby and therapy. I'd heard through the inevitable small-town gossip network that Allison had indeed pursued things with Tyler, but that relationship had lasted all of 6 weeks before he'd moved on to his next conquest. She'd apparently thrown herself into work after that, earning a promotion and a transfer to the company's branch office in Portland. Good for her, I thought when I heard the news. Distance might give her the perspective she needed to understand what she'd lost and why she'd lost it. I was wrong about the perspective part. It was a Tuesday in early March when she showed up again, this time at my shop rather than my apartment. I was under the hood of a 1968 Mustang when Jake called out that I had a visitor. I slid out from under the car and looked up to see Allison standing in the doorway, backlit by the afternoon sun. She looked different than she had 8 months ago. Thinner, more polished, with the kind of expensive haircut and designer clothes that spoke of success and disposable income. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "Allison," I replied, wiping my hands on a shop rag. "I heard you moved to Portland." "I did," she said. "I'm back for a few days visiting family." "How's that working out for you?" I asked. "Portland? It's good. Great, actually. The job is challenging, the city is vibrant. I have a corner office and a view of the river." "Congratulations," I said, and meant it. Whatever else Allison was, she'd always been intelligent and capable. I was glad she'd found professional success. "Thank you," she said. "I've learned a lot about myself over the past 8 months, about what I want, what I value, what really matters in life." I had a feeling I knew where this conversation was heading, but I let her continue. "I made mistakes, Marcus," she said. "Big ones. I let other people influence my thinking, convince me that grass might be greener somewhere else. I nearly threw away the best thing in my life for something that was never real to begin with." "Tyler," I said. "Tyler was nothing," she said dismissively. "A distraction, a fantasy. Someone I built up in my mind because I was bored and looking for excitement in all the wrong places." "And now?" I asked. "Now I know better," she said. "Now I understand what real love looks like, what commitment means, what I actually want in a partner." She stepped closer, her eyes bright with the kind of intensity I remembered from our early days together. "I want you, Marcus," she said. "I want us. I want to try again." I'd known this moment would come eventually. Allison wasn't the type of person who accepted defeat gracefully, especially when she'd convinced herself that she'd made a mistake rather than revealed her true character. "That's not going to happen," I said quietly. "Why not?" she asked. "People deserve second chances, Marcus. Especially people who've learned from their mistakes." "Some mistakes can't be undone," I said. "Some trust, once broken, can't be repaired." "That's not true," she said urgently. "We loved each other for 3 years. That doesn't just disappear because of one bad decision." "It wasn't one bad decision," I said. "It was a series of choices that showed me who you really are. The woman I thought I loved was someone who understood commitment, who valued loyalty, who wouldn't ask her fiancé for permission to pursue another man." "I was confused," she said. "I was getting bad advice from a therapist who filled my head with nonsense about exploring feelings and authentic communication. I know better now." "Do you?" I asked. "Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear?" "I'm telling you the truth," she insisted. "I've spent 8 months thinking about what I lost, about what I threw away. I've dated other people, tried to move on, but nobody compares to you." "You dated other people," I repeated, "including Tyler." Her face flushed slightly. "That lasted 6 weeks. It was a rebound, nothing more." I realized almost immediately that I'd made a terrible mistake. "But you stayed with him for 6 weeks," I pointed out. "Long enough to explore those feelings you were so curious about." "It was nothing," she said quickly. "Physical attraction, that's all. There was no emotional connection, no real compatibility. He was exactly what you said he was, a shallow, selfish man who only cared about conquest." "And yet you chose him over me," I said. "I didn't choose him over you," she protested. "I made a stupid request for honesty that you interpreted as betrayal." "Because it was betrayal," I said. "You asked for permission to pursue another man while staying engaged to me. How is that not betrayal?" "Because I never actually pursued him while we were together," she said. "I came to you first. I was honest about my feelings. I asked for your input." "You asked for my permission," I corrected. "You wanted me to give you my blessing to cheat." "I wanted to handle confusing feelings in an honest way," she said. "I thought communication was better than secrets." We were going in circles, rehashing the same arguments we'd had 8 months ago. Allison still didn't understand what she'd done wrong, still saw herself as the victim of miscommunication rather than the architect of betrayal. "It doesn't matter now," I said. "What's done is done." "It matters to me," she said desperately. "Marcus, I love you. I've always loved you. I know I hurt you, but I'm asking for another chance. I'm asking you to forgive me." "I have forgiven you," I said, "but forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation." "Why not?" she asked. "If you've forgiven me, if you understand that I made a mistake, why can't we try again?" "Because trust is like a vase," I said. "Once it's broken, you can glue it back together, but it's never the same. There are always cracks, always weak spots where it might break again." "So you're just going to give up?" she asked. "You're going to let one mistake destroy 3 years of love?" "I'm going to learn from experience," I said. "You showed me who you are, Allison. I believe you." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her processing the finality in my voice. This wasn't a negotiation she could win with the right arguments or the right emotional appeals. "I see," she said finally. "You've moved on." "I have," I said. "Is there someone else?" she asked. I thought about Sophia, the art teacher I'd been seeing for the past 2 months. Nothing serious yet, but promising. Someone who understood that commitment meant something, who didn't see relationships as opportunities for exploration. "That's not really your business anymore," I said. The answer told her everything she needed to know. Her face went pale, and for a moment she looked like she might cry. "I hope she makes you happy," she said stiffly. "She does," I said. "She's honest, loyal, and she doesn't ask for permission to pursue other men." The barb hit home. Allison's composure cracked, and I saw a flash of the anger that had always lurked beneath her polished exterior. "You're a fool, Marcus," she said. "You're throwing away a second chance at real love because of your pride." "I'm protecting myself from making the same mistake twice," I said. "Fine," she said, gathering herself. "But don't come looking for me when this new relationship falls apart. Don't expect me to be waiting when you realize what you've lost." "I won't," I said. "I know exactly what I've lost, and I know exactly what I've gained." She left without another word, her heels clicking on the concrete floor, just like her mother's had months earlier. I watched her drive away in a car I didn't recognize, probably a lease that came with her new job and her new life. Jake emerged from the office where he'd been discreetly working during our conversation. "Ex-fiancée?" he asked. "Ex-fiancée," I confirmed. "She seemed nice," he said diplomatically. "She was," I said, "until she wasn't." That evening, I called Sophia and told her about Allison's visit. She listened without judgment, asked thoughtful questions, and offered the kind of support that came from genuine caring rather than obligation. "How do you feel about seeing her again?" Sophia asked. "Relieved," I said. "Relieved that I made the right choice 8 months ago." "No second thoughts?" "None," I said. "She's still the same person who asked for permission to cheat on me. Success and distance haven't changed that." "Good," Sophia said. "I'd hate to lose you to someone who doesn't appreciate what she had." That was the difference between Sophia and Allison. Sophia understood that relationships were built on mutual respect and shared values, not on exploration and self-discovery at the expense of your partner. I spent that night working on the Chevelle, losing myself in the familiar rhythm of restoration. Some things could be saved, brought back to their original glory with patience and skill. Others were too damaged, too fundamentally flawed to be worth the effort. The trick was knowing the difference. 6 weeks after Allison's unexpected return and equally swift departure, I found myself in a place I hadn't expected to be again so soon. Genuinely happy. Not the desperate happiness of someone trying to convince himself he'd made the right choice, but the quiet contentment of a man whose life had found its proper rhythm. Sophia and I had grown closer. our relationship developing with the natural ease of two people who understood what they wanted and weren't interested in games or drama. She was 31, divorced, with no children, and no desire to complicate her life with unnecessary emotional turbulence. Like me, she'd learned the hard way that some people weren't worth the effort it took to love them. We spent our evenings together when our schedules allowed, cooking dinner in her small but immaculate kitchen or working side by side in my garage, she grading papers while I tinkered with the Chevelle. It was domestic in the best way, comfortable without being boring, stable without being stagnant. "You know what I like about you?" she said one Thursday night as we shared a bottle of wine on her couch, her feet tucked under her, my arm around her shoulders. "My devastating good looks and charming personality," I suggested. She laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Your honesty. You don't play games, you don't say things you don't mean, and you don't ask for things you're not willing to give." "Revolutionary concept," I said. "You'd be surprised how rare it is," she said. "My ex-husband was always trying to manage my expectations, control the narrative, make me feel like I was asking for too much when I wanted basic respect and fidelity." "Sounds familiar," I said. "Allison?" she asked. "Among others," I said. "I seem to attract people who think commitment is a starting point for negotiation rather than a promise to honor." "Well, you're stuck with me now," she said, snuggling closer. "I'm boringly committed to the people I care about." "Boring sounds perfect," I said, and meant it. The next morning brought an unexpected phone call at the shop. I was reviewing the week's work orders when Jake transferred a call to my office. "Blackwood Restoration," I answered. "Marcus, this is Jennifer Walsh." It took me a moment to place the name. Jennifer, Allison's former maid of honor and best friend. We'd met dozens of times over the years, but I hadn't heard from her since the engagement ended. "Jennifer," I said carefully, "what can I do for you?" "I wanted to talk to you about Allison," she said, "about what happened when she came to see you last month." "There's nothing to discuss," I said. "That conversation is between Allison and me." "She's not doing well, Marcus," Jennifer said. "She's been drinking too much, making poor decisions, pushing away everyone who cares about her." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. And I was. Despite everything that had happened between us, I didn't wish Allison harm. But it's not my responsibility to fix her problems anymore. "She's convinced that you're the love of her life," Jennifer continued, "that she made one mistake and you're punishing her for it forever." "It wasn't one mistake," I said. "It was a fundamental incompatibility that took 3 years to surface." "You loved her once," Jennifer said. "Doesn't that mean anything?" "It means I hope she finds happiness," I said, "with someone else." "She says you're seeing someone new," Jennifer said. "Is that true?" "That's not really Allison's business anymore," I said. "Or yours." "So it is true," Jennifer said. "How can you move on so easily after 3 years together?" "Because I learned something important about Allison during those 3 years," I said. "I learned that she's not the person I thought she was. People change, Marcus. People grow." "Some do," I said. "But core character doesn't change. The willingness to honor commitments, to put your partner's needs on equal footing with your own, to resist temptation when it conflicts with your promises, those things don't change." "You're being incredibly harsh," Jennifer said. "I'm being realistic," I replied. "Allison asked for permission to pursue another man while staying engaged to me. That revealed something fundamental about how she views relationships and commitment. Success in Portland doesn't change that." "She was confused," Jennifer said. "She was getting bad advice from that therapist." "Dr. Winters didn't make Allison have feelings for Tyler," I said. "She didn't force her to ask for permission to explore those feelings. Those were Allison's choices." "So you're just going to write off 3 years because of one conversation?" Jennifer asked. "I'm going to trust what Allison showed me about herself," I said. And what she showed me was someone who thought our engagement was negotiable. Fine, Jennifer said, her voice hardening. But you should know that Allison isn't the only one who thinks you're making a mistake. A lot of people think you're being stubborn and unforgiving. A lot of people don't understand what commitment means, I said. I'm okay with disappointing them. You're going to regret this, Jennifer said. I doubt it, I said, and hung up. Jake appeared in my office doorway a few minutes later, his expression curious. More fallout from the ex-fiancée situation? He asked. Her friend thinks I should take her back, I said. Apparently I'm being too harsh. Are you? Jake asked. I considered the question seriously. Was I being too harsh? Was I holding Allison to an impossible standard, punishing her forever for one moment of poor judgment? No, I said finally. I don't think I am. If someone shows you who they are, you should believe them. Makes sense to me, Jake said. You seem a lot happier now than you did when you were engaged. He was right. I was happier. Not just because of Sophia, though she was certainly part of it, but because I was no longer trying to build a life with someone who had fundamentally different values about relationships and commitment. That weekend, Sophia and I drove up the coast to visit a classic car show in a small seaside town 2 hours north. It was the kind of spontaneous trip that had been impossible during my relationship with Allison, who needed everything planned weeks in advance and approved by her complex social calendar. Look at that, Sophia said, pointing to a pristine 1969 Camaro Z28 in racing stripes. It's beautiful. Original paint, I said, admiring the craftsmanship. Someone took really good care of that car. Like you're doing with your Chevelle, she said. Trying to, I said. Some things are worth the effort it takes to restore them properly. And some things are too far gone to save, she said, understanding the metaphor. Exactly, I said. We spent the afternoon wandering among the cars, talking to owners, admiring the work that had gone into each restoration. There was something peaceful about it, being surrounded by people who understood that some things were worth preserving, worth the time and effort it took to bring them back to their original glory. On the drive home, Sophia was quiet for a long time, watching the scenery pass by her window. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Sure. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Allison had never said anything about Tyler? If she'd just ignored those feelings and married you anyway? It was a question I'd asked myself more than once over the past year. Sometimes, I said. But I think the truth would have come out eventually. If not with Tyler, then with someone else. The problem wasn't that she had feelings for another man. The problem was that she thought having those feelings gave her the right to explore them while staying committed to me. So you think she would have cheated eventually? Sophia asked. I think she would have found a way to justify whatever she wanted to do, I said. People with flexible morals always do. That's a depressing way to look at it, Sophia said. It's a realistic way to look at it, I said. Some people understand that commitment means giving up other options. Others see commitment as a safety net that allows them to take risks they wouldn't take if they were truly alone. Which category do I fall into? She asked with a smile. The first one, I said without hesitation. You understand that love is a choice you make every day, not a feeling that happens to you. Good answer, she said. That night, as we lay in bed in her apartment, Sophia traced lazy patterns on my chest with her fingertip. I'm glad Allison asked for permission to explore her feelings, she said quietly. Why? I asked. Because it showed you who she really was before you married her, she said, and because it led you to me. No regrets about being someone's second choice? I asked. You're not my second choice, she said. You're my right choice. There's a difference. She was right, of course. The timing of when you meet someone doesn't determine their value in your life. What matters is what you build together, what you choose to create from the moment you find each other. I thought about Allison, probably alone in her Portland apartment, wondering why her grand gesture of reconciliation had failed. She still didn't understand that some betrayals couldn't be undone with apologies and promises to do better. She still saw our breakup as a punishment for her honesty rather than a natural consequence of her choices. But that was her burden to carry, not mine. I'd learned to tell the difference between people who were worth saving and people who were too damaged by their own poor choices to be worth the effort. Sophia was worth the effort, worth the risk of loving again, worth the vulnerability that came with opening your heart to someone new. Some things, once broken, couldn't be repaired. But some things, given the right care and attention, could be better than they'd ever been before. I was counting on that being true for both of us.